Welcome everybody to Chaps Many Cultures, episode number 203. Big expectations for this episode. Now, we don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're just going to wing it, right? That's the best plan. Maybe it's not, especially when you're crossing cultures. Let's talk about how these things can cause some mishaps coming up. Yes, welcome back to the number one show on the business of culture and the culture of business, where barely, too much culture is barely enough. How about you?
Too much culture.
Too much
Happy
culture.
Friday, everybody. Hey, there's not too much culture. There is not such a thing. Welcome, everybody, to episode 203. We lost count somewhere along the way. And I hope you didn't, because you're still watching, and we're happy that you're watching. We'd love to know what it is that's on your mind, what you would like to ask us or experts. Sometimes there's smarter people than us that we bring onto this program, and we would love for you to engage with them. And before you send us your questions, we also want to know where in the world you are, because we understand that not everybody who watches this program is geographically close to where Brett is. He lives in the Midwestern United States in the greater Chicago area. And this little puppy here, who's down in the southeastern part of the U.S. in Atlanta. We know we have audience around the world, and we're grateful for that. We want you to let us know whenever you tune in, or even though you might not be tuning in live, you might want to be watching this asynchronously, and let us know, regardless, let the world know where you are. Antimo says, in Torino, how did you go up north? I thought he lived down south in Italy. Oh, okay. He's traveling the country. All right. Good to see you, Antimo.
Buongiorno.
Well, buonasera, probably.
Buonasera, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I don't know what afternoon is.
I'm sure he'll tell us. I'm sure. Put it in the chat. What is the good afternoon? Well, let's jump into today's topic, and it's kind of a bit of it's one of those topics that's been in our mind, especially in recent the events over the last couple of weeks. We've lost Christian, but he'll come back. We have actually been watching some of the machinations about the terrible events in Afghanistan. Here he comes. He's coming back. No camera. There he goes. Live TV, people. Live TV.
I'm still fixing the camera.
Well, I'll carry on. So I was saying that, we've been looking at events in places around the world, and current events like at the time of this recording, recent have been Afghanistan, and some of the discussions, the debates about. First of all, of course, our thoughts and our very best to our fellow humans in that country who are suffering so much in like uncertainty at the moment, and I guess we're not experts. We're certainly not military people. We're certainly not politicians, and we're not here to comment on the situation itself. But when you look at things like this that happen in the world, you think to yourself, from the historical perspective of looking back on what's been done, and of course 2020 is hindsight is perfect, but or the other way around, whatever that is. But we often see where whole countries and even coalitions of allies can anticipate and make big plans, sometimes in the best or maybe not the best intentions, to go into an area where they possibly do not have the expertise and cultural understanding of what the dynamics are on the ground. So then we just kind of we see this so much in our day-to-day work and working with executives and companies all around the world that do the same thing. So we're just going to kind of, maybe just, and we'd love you as the audience to kind of put your comments in on this. In what are some of the ways that people can really, or companies can really make sure that they're putting these best plans in place? And I'm just going to use a little reference, another metaphor, right?
Before you do that, though, I want to acknowledge that we have people joining in from Grenoble in France. If I'm not Danielle, if I'm not mistaken, that's in the southeastern part of France, close to the French Alps. And Antimo is teaching us. Good afternoon is buon pomeriggio. Okay. Buon pomeriggio it is. Mille grazie, Antimo. All right.
Yeah. So, my learned friend here shared this picture the other day. This is a little bit of construction.
You have learned friend? Interesting.
Right? Yeah, that's you, right? Okay. Take it. It's good, Yeah. So basically, this is a foundation. You're pouring a foundation, right? You are pouring a foundation for a building of sorts. This is what's going on in your house at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's my side yard, not my backyard, my side yard.
The side yard, right?
The foundation has now been poured. That process has been completed. It's dried out. It's ready to be built upon.
Fantastic. Well, I've got a question for you. I mean, it's a serious question. Why didn't you just start with the roof? Wouldn't that be more intelligent? Because that would provide cover.
Yeah, rain now. That's true, and it would keep the bird poop from the floor. I agree with you. That would be lovely, but what's that roof going to stand upon? Who's going to?
Well, that's the point, of course. I used to have I still have a very good friend who's a bricklayer, and we were sitting down having a discussion once, and he said, when I build a house, I'm not actually thinking about the first brick I lay. I'm thinking about the last brick I lay, and what it's going to take to get to that brick in that far corner, at the top far corner. And this is another metaphor of what we're talking about, is that what is the foundation that you're bringing? And in cultural terms, culture is just one part of it. When we're doing business across borders, and even within diverse teams, that cultural foundation is key to providing the very best shelter for any storms that come. You see how I did that?
Yeah, you did that marvelously, my learned friend. And I like your Mason friend who is going about a process with the end in mind, right? What is our desired, or as we say in NLP, what's our well-formed outcome? Because only if the outcome that we have in mind, that we envision or imagine for ourselves, only that is well-formed, if it ticks all the boxes, then it's a goal worthy of going after, and then we will put all of our effort, all of our resources, all our energy into it. If it's an outcome, a desired outcome that has some glitches, or there are some things that we did not consider from the get-go, then we will either fill those blanks along the way, or we can continue to ignore them, hoping they will magically disappear. And this is something that I think we can see in the current news cycle with the situation at the Hindu Kush in Afghanistan. You're perfectly right. We're neither politicians nor military experts. However, I personally know a handful of people who served in Afghanistan, and a shout out to all of you who either served yourselves or know somebody, or have friends or family members who are veterans of action in Afghanistan, and who are wondering why they put themselves in danger, and maybe why they put their life in limit risk, or why they had to mourn the loss of comrades and friends and co-workers, right? So if you have Afghanistan veterans within your circles, listen to them. Shut up and listen. And so, no, I'm not a military, I'm not a politician. However, one can't but think that the outcome that we as the so-called West had in Afghanistan may have been not well formed. We may have gone into this a little bit unprepared, wouldn't you think so, Brett?
Yeah. So it gives you pause, right? To then, I think you've brought up a good point. It's the ongoing effect it has on in that case, the fellow people that you went to the battles with. That is just as applicable in the boardroom and in the business world, right? There are people that, if you diminish the impact and preparation of what you're going to do, any failures down the road may not only affect you, they affect just why people followed you, why they did what they did. If such less optimum outcomes are the result. And so we wanted to talk a little bit, of course, and we've touched on these themes before. These are not new themes that we haven't discussed, but the preparation of this would be perhaps, and let's put it in that kind of geopolitical sense. If countries are looking at themselves in terms of their ability to help and aid other countries, if you're using that as an excuse for either colonization or other actions, then why not kind of learn a little bit about yourself, some self-reflection, right? Some self-reflection about, do we have the actual right as a country, or in the business world as a business, to and what is it about us, what are the values that we hold that are going to either align or have contrast with the places we're going to? So we've touched on these themes, but in that bigger political, there is a lot of kind of record of countries just going in with the best intentions and not seeing how they're seeing themselves in the rest of the world, or understanding their real true motives and what values are driving these things.
Right. And I think this might be a little bit of a oversimplified juxtaposition here that I'm going to make, but going into a country like Afghanistan, or we've seen other attempts at this, Vietnam will come to mind from a US perspective, where there is a political goal. The desired outcome is one of geopolitical results, where there is not a profit and loss balance sheet of like a corporation that does business and has to answer to their shareholders or to their owners or to whoever owns the capital. In this case, those who could be held accountable only answer to the people that put them in office. And that's what we're seeing right now in the United States. There's a public debate of who is to blame and who gets the bucket of blame, who gets to hold it longest, and how can we make this into political currency today. I think this is not a conversation you and I want to have, and this is, as we probably all know, is a futile debate that's not leading us anywhere but to more separation within our society. But one could say that if I am going on international expansion, or if I venture into global business as either an entrepreneur, as an employee for a global organization or for that global company, then my accountability is the P&L sheet. Did I, at the end of the day, solve somebody's problem? That's why I'm in business in the first place. Whose problem am I solving? And in doing so, did I generate value? And as a result, did I generate a profit for myself or for the company? So that is my immediate accountability sheet, whether my goal is being reached or not, right? So one might argue, if I'm a global organization with a business plan that involves international collaboration, then the immediacy of success or failure can be found in my billfold. In geopolitical terms, I think the outcome is one that we all as societies may have to bear. And right now, in this case of Afghanistan, we're going to talk about who's going to take refugees, who will be responsible for recreating some sort of dialogue with a new regime. All of these things that are not necessarily like a business conversation. However, the common denominator, and that's, I think, the point that we're making, it's either a faux pas, which it turns out to be right now in Afghanistan, and let's face it, we've known that for several years, or it's a fairy tale, right? And how do we make such things fairy tales? Or is it ever possible to create a fairy tale? Isn't a fairy tale something more like wishful thinking rather than reality? So how do we make it and I don't like to use fairy tale in the corporate sense. How do we create a positive outcome, a measurable positive outcome in international collaboration? And I think that's where, I'm saying it here behind my shoulder, right? That's if you don't get that puzzle piece, if you don't get culture, it will get you. And that's what we've been seeing in Afghanistan.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we might think that perhaps a little bit more curiosity about the dynamics of the culture that we're engaging with, the true openness to understand and have some empathy with the people, the other cultures you're working with. This is just one kind of tenet of what we found in global leadership. Is one of the most common denominators of the most successful people we work with on the world stage. And that is this unquenchable curiosity, right? The willingness to question not only themselves, but the others, to understand and tear down preconceptions and stereotypes and things like this that often just make us uninformed, and therefore tell fairy tales. We can tell fairy tales based on our false assumptions and presumptions. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think we've been telling ourselves, right? We've maintained this charade of, oh well, it's going to turn out somehow okay. We're going to get away with a black eye, but it's going to be all right. So that house of cards seems to be falling right now. I'm not here to make predictions. I think what's interesting is that what stands in the way of curiosity is, I think the worst three words that you can say in the English language is, I know that. If you go into this new venture thinking you are the smarter party, right? So that is true for, let's say, a cross-border merger or acquisition, business terms, or let's say a military intervention / colonization. Is one party thinking they know better than the other party? We're going to bring democracy to this part of the world because we think that our system is superior to their current system. We're buying this company because we think we can manage it better than they have been able to. So that's often what stands in the way of maintaining a level of curiosity. You may go into this venture actually thinking you have the better solution. Otherwise, probably you wouldn't start doing it. But allowing that to override that ongoing curiosity in order to learn from what's already been there and maybe what you have been missing in your assessment from a distance, that is what's going to throw you to the wolves, I think.
Yeah. I was just going to, as you were saying that, I'm just reflecting on that also has the same effect on the people at home, right? In the geopolitical sense, that if you are just constantly trying to put people at ease and saying, look, we have some internal intel. We can't tell you about it, but trust us. We are, this is our idea. And, and after a while, people just kind of go, well, okay, then maybe we shouldn't ask. So therefore, maybe we shouldn't be curious. So therefore, it really has an effect on the psyche of your home team, right? Talk about the home team. Right. If you are demonstrating that folly of ignorance, and it really is a folly of ignorance, yeah.
Well, and if even if there are still parties that show curiosity, and even if you allow new intelligence to get to your desk or to your attention without acting on it, it's kind of a futile attempt. And this is what the SIGAR report has told us. It's the special, I forget, the investigator general, whoever U.S. Congress put in charge for Afghan reconstruction. So they have a public mandate, right? They have funding, and they've been in Afghanistan for what, 13, 14 years. And their report was released this week or last week. And basically they say, well, the US governments, plural, whoever was in charge at the time, did not act upon the intel that we gave them. We gave them recommendations what to best do in certain scenarios, but for either political reasons or other reasons, this information was not implemented. So all your curiosity will lead you not away from the starting block if you don't analyze the data and act upon it. So I think that's something that businesses also want to keep in mind. I completed a training program just this week for a senior executive in a global pharmaceutical chemical company, person from North America who will be going to Central Europe. I'm not going to divulge any more information because I want to keep that as anonymous as possible. But this gentleman is going to lead a whole division in Europe in his organization, and he's charged with making some changes that will lead to decisions that not everybody on the current team will embrace. And he asked me point blank, he said, what if there's information that I cannot share with my team? Because I told him the only way you get in that location with a culture you're going to deal with, the only way you get buy-in and support from your team is to show your cards and to enroll them and to build consensus. That in the culture that he's going into, this will be his most promising strategy in order to succeed. And he said, well, there might be some information that I'm not at liberty of sharing with them, so I have to keep some of these things under wraps and still move forward. So this is the tough part. This is where, in an international business sense, if you're working with cultures that are different than your own, you're going to have to reconcile these discrepancies. How much are you willing to follow your corporate agenda or whatever your superiors are expecting of you? Or how much are you, let's say, bending the rules is maybe not the best term, but how much are you willing and able to adjust corporate governance to the local situation that you're dealt with? And this is, I think, what most global organizations at some point or another struggle with. We have this corporate value system or this corporate strategy that we expect everybody to adhere to. However, it originated in one culture and doesn't quite gel well in another part of the world. So how do we cross that gap, right?
Yeah. The point is, the information is out there. There's no excuse in today's globally connected world to be ignorant about cultural differences. There's absolutely no excuse. I would say that to the cows come home. There is absolutely no excuse. Again, we can look back in history and say, well, back in history, maybe the information wasn't so readily available, or there wasn't the academic insights, the resources to be able to learn and understand about other cultures. You don't have that excuse today. If you're a global leader and you're doing just what Christian just mentioned then, as that gentleman he worked with, and you do not take advantage of the information that's available to you, then I mean, that's intentional ignorance I'm just going to call it what it is. I mean, that's intentional ignorance. And so there really should not be any excuse in this day and age for either governments, companies, individuals to be to tell themselves fairy tales through the window of gleeful ignorance. There's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for it. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to raise the question, what have we learned, or how is this going to get better in the current geopolitical scenario? I think this is not the place for us to make any suggestions or give predictions. I think the bottom line or the underlying message that Brett and I have is, if every company, every organization that has ever done business, who has ever had activity outside of their culture of origin, has been facing challenges around culture. This isn't optional, right? This is an inevitable certainty. You will encounter cross-cultural challenges. So the question is whether you're a politician, if you're a military commander or a business leader, how are you going to handle it? Are you, as Brett said, willfully ignoring it and hoping for the best? Or are you going to address these issues? The knowledge is there, the information is there. There are people who have done this before. There are case studies of how not to do it, right? So the faux pas stories, there are plenty. Some of you might remember, was it Air France and France and KLM, Royal Dutch KLM and Delta Airlines of the United States forming an alliance that didn't always fly well, forgive my bad pun here. There was a German car manufacturer by the name of Daimler who merged with the US's Chrysler, and they called it a merger of equals, and the outcome was billions of dollars in shareholder value evaporated. There's multiple stories of how not to do it. So the question that we in our profession are asking is, how many more faux pas or disaster cautionary tale studies do you need to see and go through before you maybe start with the foundation rather than with the roof?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the bigger question is, will we learn from it? Will we learn from a situation like Afghanistan, given that what we know and the open information, source information that's available today to us? Will any countries learn from this folly? I don't know. I would hope so. You would hope that, you know, I mean, because it hasn't, there's plenty of blame to go around, but this is not the time to think about blame. But it's just that wonderful, the lessons that can come out of this. I mean, maybe those lessons need to be put aside for now, and we need to take care of the people. This is the humanity, right? And this is why this field of work is such humanity. I was watching a thing about music yesterday, and somebody was saying, commenting on a piece of U2 music where they were talking about Larry Miller's drumming, you know, and saying this is something you can't create with a drum machine. And he used this great term. It said, if you want the humanity to be in the music, you have to have it played by humans. I thought that was a great line.
Good point to that.
Right? And so if you want the humanity to stay in your company, in your country, in your interactions with people, you have to have it done by humans, and understand that those humans all play to a different tune, and it can't be recreated by technology. It can't be recreated by false hopes and dreams. It can't be created by false, again, technology. It just can't be recreated. It is a human science, and we need to understand the humanity within it. So for me personally, and I'm sure you too, Christian, thinks about this. I mean, we're watching humanity unfold with the people that are suffering the uncertainty in places like not just Afghanistan. You know, we've got places in, you know, all around the world suffering from these follies. So the results or the outcomes of results of actions that were taken decades ago, we're still suffering from that. Just hope that we can move forward and start to learn from these in a faster and more efficient way. That would be nice, so that we, you know,
I don't know, for some reason, and this may sound like I'm in my late teens, early 20s by putting those equivalences out. But I listened to a German Afghanistan veteran on German news this past week, and the man was visibly moved, if not angry, and he was live on camera, and he could barely contain his anger over the unfolding situation that everyone was watching. But he made a few comments that let me pause, and he said, getting these people to safety that are from the Afghan people or who might be of other ethnicities in the area, who have been helping the boots on the ground, making their work possible, is the big humanitarian crisis, right? And he said, without those people on the ground, without our interpreters and our cultural guides, none of our mission would have been possible. So without a interpreter, without a cultural guide, none of the soldiers would have been able to, or NGOs would have been able to do the work that they were doing. So recognize, if your specialty, your professional expertise is in one field, that doesn't immediately make you an expert in another field. And if that other field that you're lacking the skill set is that of language or culture or a combination of both, then by all means, if your desired outcome is success, then expand your team with the people who have that level of expertise that your team doesn't.
Absolutely. Well, what do you say, man? Wrap it up. Good.
Let's wrap it up.
Chat.
And this is an invitation to all of us, not just to Brett and I. Those of you who are watching, if you have resources that pertain to the current situation, if you have resettlement information, if you have information about, I don't know, private projects flying out people who are endangered in those regions, whatever you have in resources that you want to be seen by the world or that should be shared amongst us, amongst our tribe, so to say, put them in the comment. We'll put some stuff in the comment and share those information. Please, before you do, make sure you double check whether they're valid, and let's not perpetuate some nonsense that is flying out there. If you're certain about the validity of some offer of some nonprofit or some rescue mission, please let the world know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir, for another, and we wish everybody a wonderful weekend, and continue to be safe, happy, and healthy. And this is Two Chaps, Many Cultures, episode 203, another one in the can. We'll be back next week with another episode, maybe even a couple of, no, a bit busy next week, maybe not a couple of episodes, at least one.
Yes.
So thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We will see you next episode. Bye now.
Ciao for now.